This is a lecture about 1.8b, under Model Rule 1.8b, which is one of the conflicts of interest rules in the ABA's Model Rules of Professional Conduct. This is tested on the MPRE. And all of the 1.8 rules it's a kind of a hodgepodge of rules that apply to the lawyer's personal conflicts or self-interest and the client, vis-a-vis the client. And B is a shorter rule, so this is probably going to be a shorter lecture. And this is using information that you get from your representation. So the use of information, and I have a chessboard here because a lot of times lawyers are doing this strategically or opportunistically, information they get from the representation. So here's B. A lawyer shall not use information relating to the representation of a client to the disadvantage of the client unless the client gives informed consent and except as permitted or required by these rules. So there may be other rules that require disclosure, for example, answering the state bar truthfully about when they inquire into a matter, or a judge. You may have to disclose something even if it hurts your client. But in general, you're not allowed to take information that you got from your client and use it to your client's disadvantage. This is from the comments. This is comment 5 to Model Rule 1.8, and comment 5 relates to 1.8b. Use of information relating to the representation to the disadvantage of the client violates the lawyer's duty of loyalty. Paragraph B applies when the information is used to benefit either the lawyer or a third person, such as another client or a business associate of the lawyer. Here's an example. For example, a lawyer learns that the client intends to purchase and develop several, let's say, adjacent parcels of land. And the lawyer may not use that information to purchase one of the parcels in competition with the client or to recommend that another client make such a purchase. So if your client is a developer, or let's say they're going to put in a mall and they need to buy dozens of acres of property, so they're buying adjacent parcels of land to put in a new shopping mall or a plaza or gigantic Walmart or new subdivision or something like that, right? The concern is somebody who knows that there's someone who's trying to buy up these parcels of land and who really has to get all of them, like the complete set of, could engage in a holdout game with the developer and essentially hold out until they get a high price. In your property class, you may have learned that this is part of the policy rationale for eminent domain laws. So when the government needs to put in a road or railroad tracks or something like that, and they have to buy landowners' land, they don't have to just negotiate and pay the market, pay whatever price you're willing to sell for. They can essentially force the sale and pay you reasonable compensation. And now the private party can't do that. They can't exercise eminent domain. And so they are at risk. If somebody figures out that there's a single person trying to buy up all of the parcels of land in an area so that they can develop a large tract, one of those owners could hold out because they know that at some point they will pay almost any price if you're the last person whose property they don't have. A lot of clients, therefore, who are doing this will do it through LLCs or multiple LLCs to try to kind of keep it quiet what's happening. Even the very fact that they're buying up parcels could drive up real estate prices in the area. And so even if somebody doesn't engage in a holdout game and demand some astronomical price that's more than the property is worth because they know they have a desperate buyer who they're the last parcel they need, just the fact that properties are selling suddenly in that area, it can drive up the appraisal value of all the other properties. And so you as a lawyer, if you know your client's on kind of a land buying spree in an area, you go and buy one of the parcels behind your client's back, knowing that it's going to appreciate, even if you're not a complete jerk about it, the property, you'll turn some kind of profit, but that profit will be at your client's expense. And so you're not allowed to do that, nor are you allowed to get on the phone with your other clients and say, by the way, I happen to be on good information that somebody's buying all the tracts of land out along the highway. And so maybe you should get in on it because you'll be able to flip the property and make a profit. That would violate this rule. You would be subject to discipline. Now, the rule does not prohibit uses that do not of information that do not disadvantage the client. For example, a lawyer who learns that a government agency's interpretation of trade legislation during the representation of one client may properly use that information to the benefit of other clients. This is part of why experienced lawyers can charge more, right? Because you know the ropes and you've done a lot of cases and you already know the law, or you've litigated against a particular government agency repeatedly, and so you know how they interpret the law, you know how they prioritize litigating cases and settling and so forth, and that type of information is valuable, and it doesn't hurt your first client that now you know more and in some ways provide more valuable representation to subsequent clients. Paragraph B prohibits disadvantageous use of client information unless the client gives informed consent. And so if you want to go buy that parcel of land or tell your friends to buy parcels of land, ask the client, is it okay if I buy a parcel in the meantime or tell other people to buy land? And if the client says, sure, go ahead, then you have consent from them as permitted or required by these rules. Now, paragraph B prohibits, we already talked about this, the disadvantageous use of client information unless the client gives informed consent. Sorry, I already covered that point in the previous slide. Just to quickly, a couple older ABA ethics opinions. I don't think you'll be asked about these on the MPRE, but in theory you could, because the examiners treat these ABA ethics opinions essentially as a gloss, an official gloss on the rule or clarification of what the rule means. So in 2005, the ABA clarified that a lawyer who simultaneously represents, say, a liability insurer and, in an unrelated matter, a claimant against one of its insureds may not use information relating to the representation of the insurer for the claimant's benefit. And so the fact that you do outsourced legal work for an insurance company, that they may waive the conflict of interest, but you're still not allowed to use information you glean about that insurance company's policies to hurt that company. In 2002, we had an ethics opinion that a lawyer acting as a fiduciary may have a conflict in using information gained from the representation of the beneficiary in an unrelated matter. Watch out for fiduciary relationships, like being the trustee of a trust that your client sets up on behalf of the beneficiaries. Fiduciaries have very robust duties. A final point about this, the restatement third of the law governing lawyers has a somewhat stronger rule about using information because it takes and this is one of the few points where the restatement kind of deviates from the model rules. Usually it tracks it exactly, and that's why there's no point in teaching both, because you're learning one when you learn the model. You're learning the restatement most of the time when you learn the model rules. This is one point where the restatement takes a stronger position, imposes a stronger fiduciary duties on lawyers to actually prefer the client's benefit and not to get any benefit without kind of sharing that benefit with your client. So watch out for that. A final word about this that I don't have on the slides, but do remember that insider trading laws will apply to lawyers. And the ABA didn't talk about this in the model rule or the comments, but when we're talking about publicly traded corporations, if you're representing a corporation and let's say you know that they're secretly developing a new product line that's going to revolutionize the market, do not start calling your friends and tell them, by the way, hot stock tip that I happen to know because I have insider information that you should buy stock right now in this company. You could be violating federal securities laws and be charged with insider trading, and lawyers can go to jail for insider trading just like anybody else. And so don't assume that because you're a lawyer that you get to engage in information sharing with stock tips that other people would not. Here's our attendance quiz question. If you need to document that you watched this video, you can email me the answer or just keep it for your records. If a lawyer learns that a client's business is secretly planning to acquire another company in financial distress, can the lawyer tip off other clients it would be a good time to invest in the struggling business? In other words, with the idea that that struggling business, the investment is going to become more valuable once it's acquired and turned around by by a parent company. And is that yes, can the lawyer do that unless the client has forbidden it, or no, unless the client consents? And hopefully you know the answer to that from watching this video. And if you don't, you should probably rewatch the video.